Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Prevention of Blindness Society Tech Talk Tuesday. Today's date is Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. And we're very excited to have our guest speaker on today, who I'll introduce very shortly. We're going to be talking about survival Braille. But before we get started, just a couple of announcements from the Prevention of Blindness Society for a couple of events that are coming up very shortly. In fact, tomorrow, Wednesday, May 17th, we will have our Low Vision Town Hall at 11 a.m. via Zoom. And for this month, we are having a guest speaker from Vision Aware. Vision Aware is a national level virtual resource that has a lot, and when I say a lot, I'm talking about hundreds of resources, blogs, and information when it comes to vision loss and everyday living adjustments. So very, very excited to have our guest speaker on from there, who's going to share a little bit about what all you can find there, and also what they stand for and what they're trying to do as an organization. So we're very, very excited about that. If you're interested in joining that, again, that's tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's on Zoom. So if you want the Zoom link, you can shoot us an email at events@youreyes.org or give our resource hotline a call, 301-951-4444. Additionally, on Saturday, June 10th, so we're less than a month away now, we're going to have our next installment of the Being the Light Friends and Family Connection. This event is an opportunity for those of you who have vision loss to bring yourself, but also your friends and family along, as we have a luncheon panel discussion about life with vision loss, making those adjustments, and also communication strategies with loved ones. Our main overarching topic for it, and we're going to talk about other stuff too, but a main overarching topic is the invisible disability. And what is that? We're talking about blindness, because when you're visually impaired, the general public normally doesn't recognize it. So how do we make people more aware, and how do we adjust with that? It's not the same as somebody with a physical disability, such as being in a wheelchair, where it's readily apparent. So if you're interested in joining for that, we will also have some vendors there too. So if you want to try out different aids and devices, you can join us for that. But if you're interested, again, it's going to be on Saturday, June 10th, and it's going to be at the View Alexandria, which is a retirement community in Alexandria. And the event's going to be from 12 to 2:30. If you want to sign up, you can visit beingthelight.org. Or again, you can always give us a call at 301-951-4444. All right, so we're going to get into today's topic, survival Braille. What is that? Very, very broad. We're talking about some of the very overarching basics of Braille that'll help you through everyday activities, especially in public life, where there is Braille for a lot of things. I'm not going to go into much more detail because I know our guest speaker, Ms. Dorlyn Catron, is going to be talking more about it. And I'm excited now to introduce Dorlyn. She has been visually impaired for nearly a decade. And since losing her sight, she has turned and learned so much about Braille that she is now an advocate for it, both far and wide. In fact, she actually is a facilitator for the American Council of the Blind when it comes to sharing information and raising awareness about the impact that Braille can have for people. And again, folks, this is a tool for you. Doesn't have to be the only way that you learn how to communicate. This can be part of your toolkit, which is so important. As many of you are aware, when we lose our sight, we want to have different tools in our toolkit to be able to interact with the lived environment. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dorlyn.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for that introduction. And I can't agree more with you that Braille is a tool, a great tool to put in our toolboxes, but we don't have to use it the same way everyone else does. No one uses it the same. It's our tool and it's there to serve us. And so I'm going to talk about some ways today that Braille can really serve you well. Like Sean said, in public, out in the wild, I like to call it, or just in your personal life, around the house and everything like that. So first, I'll talk a little bit about myself. As Sean said, my name's Dorlyn Catron. I am, for anyone who can't see us on the video, I am a white woman with brown hair pulled back into a short ponytail. I've got a black boom mic on so that you can hear me better. And I have a white button-up blouse on and a little silver necklace that has some Braille on it, which I'll talk about a little later. It says JDX on it though, so some folks might already know what that means. And if not, stay tuned, you'll find out. Let's see, so as Sean said, I've been blind for just about a decade now. It's been actually 9 years, and I started learning Braille about 6 years ago. I had the opportunity to come up and sit in on a Foundations of Adjustments to Blindness course that was being taught on the days that they did Braille. And the first day I learned A through J, went home and was so ready to go back to learn the rest of it the next time, learned the rest of the alphabet the next time I was there, and it's just been off to the races since. I am passionate about Braille and helping people learn it. It is such an invaluable tool to me at this point. I use it literally every day. And you can use it as little or as much as you want. It is such a broad tool. So as Sean said, I do facilitate for the American Council of the Blind on their community calls platform. I'm a volunteer there, and we run several Braille calls a week. So I get to talk about Braille all the time and help other folks learn Braille. A lot of adult learners who have lost their sight later in life or some point past learning all of the reading and writing tools. And so I really sympathize with that and do what I can to help people learn. So let's see here. That's the Council of the Blind. Oh, and I'm also pursuing my certificate in Braille transcribing right now. It's through the Library of Congress, a program that's it's contracted out to the National Federation of the Blind, and I'm working my way through that right now. It's been about a year in, and I'm hoping to be a certified Braille transcriber by the end of the year. But you know, if you just want to learn the alphabet or just the numbers, that's great, but there's this wide range for everyone. So let's see, guys, let's get into what Braille is. It's a tactile system of reading and writing for the blind. It's a system of raised dots. And now different languages have different Braille codes. They all use the same dots, but they rearranged, they have their different meanings with the different combinations. So you have English Braille. We actually use Unified English Braille in America, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Nigeria, a few others. It's an adopted system that has unified the English-speaking world. So we don't have like British Braille and South African English Braille and Australian English Braille and American English Braille, which we used to. So we've got one code now for all of the English languages, which also makes it easier for us to trade knowledge and resources with other countries via the Marrakesh Treaty, which is pretty cool. And the system was originally developed in the early 1800s by a man named Louis Braille, who himself was blind. I'm sure you have all heard of this man. There is quite a lot about him out there in the blind community, but he lost his sight at an early age, about 3 years old, ended up at a school for the blind, and through his work meeting some interesting folks, such as Charles Barbier, who was interested in bringing literacy to all, he went about creating this system. And so this system has persisted to this day. It is a system where you have a Braille cell consisting of 2 columns. We got 2 columns with 3 rows. And to illustrate this a bit, one of our household items comes in handy. If you've never encountered a Braille cell, we've got the muffin tin. So I'm going to hold up a muffin tin right now. I've got it turned upside down. That way you can see the dots raised up, but we've essentially at our
Hey, Dorlyn,
top
just a little higher.
left-hand corner, higher, right
Yeah,
there.
maybe bring it a little closer to you. To you. There, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so our top left-hand corner here, this is dot 1. Beneath that, in the middle row, still in the first column, we've got dot 2. And at the bottom left-hand corner, we've got dot 3. On our second column, top right, we've got dot 4. In the center on the right, we've got dot 5. And then at the very bottom right-hand corner, we've got dot 6. If all 6 dots are popped up, we call it a full Braille cell. So that's what I'm kind of emulating right here. I'm going to turn it around now. So we've got the hollow ones. So this would be kind of like a space or an empty cell. If you've got a muffin tin around, you can play around with this at home. I mean, if you've got one right close by, grab it now, you know. And then you can use whatever you like to fill in these, the dots. Some common household items might be like a sock that you ball up. I like to use clean ones, but you know, you make your decisions. You could also use a tennis ball, ping pong ball, really anything. Actual muffins work too, and they're delicious afterwards. So a muffin tin can be a really great tool to practice learning Braille at an early stage, but for us today, it's a really great way to illustrate the cell. I'm going to set that aside for a moment so I can get back over to my notes. All right, so those 6 dots, they can be raised and lowered in order to form 64 different combinations. That includes them all being raised up. Again, that's our full cell, and them all being not raised. So that would be our space in Braille. So that's the 2 ends of the spectrum, but 64 combinations. So there are 64 characters that your fingers would come to know if you wanted to learn the full code. And those characters can be used in different ways to write the English language, well, to write in language, as I'd said. But you can also just learn 26 of those characters, essentially the alphabet. And when you use learn the alphabet, you'll be able to make labels or read simple labels. Also, read small things. It's good to just know your alphabet. I would really, honestly, I think every sighted person should learn the Braille alphabet too. But certainly anyone with a visual impairment, I think it's worth taking the time to learn those 26 different combinations. Let's see. And now a little Braille does go a long way. Once you learn the first 10 letters of the alphabet, which are A through J, you've also essentially learned the numbers. Because what we do in Braille is if it's just the dot combination as you see it in the alphabet, it'll be that letter. But if we put what we call a numeric indicator in front of it, which is dots 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm gonna hold up my muffin tin again. So the bottom dot 3, then 4, 5, and 6. So it kind of looks like a backwards uppercase L to us print readers. But you put that before the letter A and you've got number 1. Put it before B and you've got 2. Before C, 3. D, 4, and so on up until you get to I, which is 9. And then J is our 0. So if we wanted to write the number 10, for instance, we'd put our numeric indicator, then A, then J, and that would be 10. And so, like I said, a little goes a long way with Braille. Once you learn those first 10 letters of the alphabet, you now know your numbers as well. It's pretty exciting. And numbers get you so far in the real world, especially in elevators. It's so empowering to be able to get into an elevator because you've gotten the mobility skills to find that elevator, or maybe it's something that you're familiar with or someone helps you get there. You get an elevator, and to be able to push the button and go to the floor you want to confidently, as opposed to fumbling around. Or I'm sure many of us have taken that ride on the elevator where it's like, well, I don't know where we're going, but I'll figure it out when we get there. It's by knowing your numbers, you can get in that elevator, you can find your floor and push that button, whether there's someone else in that elevator with you or not. And once the elevator arrives to the floor, you put your hand out, and usually there are tactile raised numbers as well. There's also generally Braille there to be able to touch and confirm the floor you're on. But in any case, that first step, pushing that first button after you've found the Braille, is very exciting. So I hope everyone who hasn't had a chance to do that has the chance to do that in the near future. And so let's see, now back to a little goes a long way. Once you've also learned those first 10 letters, you're set up to learn the next actually 40 characters of the Braille code, because it follows the first 50 characters of the code. And again, we've got 64 of them. The first 50, they follow a pattern, 10 by 10. So you could set up a table kind of in your mind where you've got A, B, C, D, E, all the way through J running across. So you've got your 10 columns. Then you would have 5 rows down. So if we had A through J on our first row, our second row would be K through T. Those are our next 10 letters. And the cool thing about K through T here and the subsequent lines is we're taking the same dot combinations that we had with our letters A through J. And those letters, they actually only use the upper portion of our Braille cell. So grabbing my muffin tin again, these top 4, that's the upper portion of our Braille cell. So letters A through J are only taking up a combination of these 4. Then when we add in, or we go down to our next row, we're going to hit K through T. They are the same, where it'd be, you're just adding dot 3 down here to the row above A through J. So let's go ahead and go through A through J, guys. And if you know the Braille code, this will be good review for you. And if you don't, I think you'll be able to follow along given what we've done up till now. And if you can't, I don't know if you guys usually just you save all questions till the end, or if you want to have people stop me, Sean, or raise hands, however works. But I think right now we're going to go through letters A through J so that it'll be easier to illustrate K through T and our subsequent lines. All right, so A is just dot 1. That's our top left-hand corner. Dot 1 is A. Pretty easy to remember that guy. So now B is going to be dots 1 and 2. Dots 1 and 2. And that kind of makes sense as we're going along. So then C, we've got dots 1 and 4. That's dots 1 and 4, our top 2 there. Then D.
Hey, Dorlyn, could you bring it just a little closer to your
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep.
There you go. You were going to just cut off the top a bit. But
all right. Well, the top's so important in this part. Thank you. Alrighty, guys. So again, up till this point, we've gotten A dot 1, B dots 1 and 2, C dots 1 and 4, top 2 there. D is dots 1, 4, and 5. I kind of think that one makes a little D shape. Some of these you might be able to picture in your mind, making almost the shape of the letter. We did D, so now we're on E, which is dots 1 and 5. kind of does that slant down. Some people say E because it goes down to the earth, and earth starts with E. We got all sorts of ways to remember these guys. Now F is dots 1, 2, and 4, which does kind of look like a little F, the corner of it anyways. Again, F is 1, 2, and 4. Then G is dots 1, 2, 4, and 5. All of the dots we're working with up to this point are G. So 1, 2, 4, and 5. G, then we go to H. H is dots 1, 2, and 5. And then I is dots 2 and 4, and kind of the reverse of E, and I goes up to the sky, it's diagonal. 2 and 4 is our I. And our last one on this row, our 10th letter, is J, dots 2, 4, and 5. And so now with those 10 letters, again, remember you now know letters 1 through 9 and 0. And with those, you can make any number as long as you put our numeric indicator in front of it. That's dots 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then with these dot combinations that I just went over, I'm going to drop down to the next row. Not so that everyone necessarily keeps up and is learning everyone right now, but so to illustrate that once you know those first 10, the rest come with a pattern, making it a little easier. So our second set of 10 letters is K through T. So the K in our imaginary chart, we're putting underneath our A. Our A was dot 1. And for our second row, we add dot 3 to it. So this is going to be dots 1 and 3 for our K. Then our next letter is L. And back up to our imaginary chart, our next letter would be B, dots 1 and 2. So now we add dot 3. We've got 1, 2, and 3 for our L. People like this one because it kind of looks like a lowercase L, that one line, dots 1, 2, and 3. And then it continues across all the way through T, where you're adding dot 3 to your letters A through J. And now I'm going to set that down for a moment, but the pattern continues down to allow you to finish learning the alphabet and get into the other contractions. So once you get started, it'll start really like just revealing itself to you. Let's say that. I like the way the Braille code comes together once it starts putting its patterns in your head. Let's see. Now I've got a couple of reasons why you ought to want to learn that Braille and this survival Braille. So again, those elevators, I love that. I love getting into an elevator and being able to go where I want to go. Let's see, I heard we got a message and this is being recorded, so folks will be able to listen to this again. So you don't have to keep all of this in your head or memorize it all. You can go back and listen to it at your leisure. Also, with your numbers, you can find room numbers, which is great in like hotel rooms, conference centers, doctor's offices, other sorts of office buildings. Most of them are going to have Braille on their signs, so you can identify those. I remember one of the first times I ran into Braille signs was when I went to get my guide dog. It was just like, oh, there's Braille everywhere. This is fun. Let's see. You can also, with your numbers, use Braille calendars, which is really great. I know we all have access to digital calendars now, but for me, I've always liked being able to have that physical calendar. And when I first lost my sight, I really felt the missing presence of like my planner and being able to physically find a date. And so being able to use a Braille calendar now has really replaced that desire that I had. I like that. There's several free Braille calendars available out there. There's ones for purchase too. There's lots of options. Let's see, a couple of things with your letters. Once you know the full alphabet, a couple of really helpful things is you'll know what an M is and what a W is, which is very helpful when getting into restrooms, at least without some awkwardness occasionally. So learning the M and W, that takes you a long way as well. Now, in a lot of Braille in the wild type settings, you are going to see contracted Braille. And that's where we're using all of these characters, all 64 of them, or 63 plus our space, to create combinations. We actually sometimes use combinations of 2 or 3 of these cells in a row to create what we're trying to do in print. And you will a lot of times run into this contracted Braille out in the world. It won't be all uncontracted Braille, which is essentially using your letters one for one to write things out. So you'll learn your letters, the 26 of them, plus that numeric indicator, and then a couple of punctuation type marks are also included in uncontracted, such as your period and hyphen, stuff like that. But when you're out in the world, you'll find some contracted Braille. So you might find the EN symbol. That's the only contracted Braille you'll find in women and men. So I'll show you that EN symbol here while I've got my handy dandy muffin tin. Our EN, if you come across this out there, you'll feel it drop down. It's dots 2 and 6 at the end of your word. So I guess I didn't go over M or W yet, so let me do those real quick too. So your M is actually dots 1, 3, and 4, and then that would be followed by your EN sign, dots 2 and 6, to create the word men. And then for women, you've got your W, dots 2, 4, 5, and 6, O, which is dots 1, 3, and 5, M, dots 1, 3, and 4, and then our EN symbol again, dots 2 and 6. And now you might also run into capitalized words. Both of those words would have been capitalized in Braille. What we do to capitalize a letter in Braille is we put a dot 6, this bottom right-hand corner guy, in front of our letter that needs to be capitalized. We want the whole word to be capitalized, we put 2 dot 6s in front of it. So it's something where I encourage everyone to think about learning Braille, at least for the reasons, these places you might run into it out in the wild. But it's also something where you can use it at home to label spices, label bills, label literally anything you want. You can create your own labels if you want. There's also pre-made labels out there that you can purchase for clothing, like for colors. There's magnetic ones for cans and stuff. But really, if you learn your alphabet and then you learn how to use a slate and stylus, a little more show and tell. Sorry, guys, there's a Velcro on my pouch. But we use a simple tool called a slate, which is a hinged device, simple, where it's got windows in the front and then little pips on the back. And we put our paper in there and we use what's called a stylus to poke our holes into the paper and take notes on our own. And this is our stylus here. It's basically a little door handle with a pointy pin on one end. And now by learning to use that slate and stylus, which doesn't take too much time. I learned it, like I said, there were 2 days I got to go over and be with a class for about 30 minutes. And in that time, I learned how to use a slate and stylus. Not master it, but learned how to use it. And then you can go home and you can scribble with it. Because remember when we were kids learning to read and write, there was a lot of mistakes made, a lot of scribbling done. Same with the slate and stylus. And then if you can use a slate and stylus and you've got your letters, you can take down any note you need. You've got what the cited equivalent of pen and paper is now, and you can take it anywhere with you. Mine is plastic, it's lightweight. I own so many of these guys. You can buy them for $5. There's free ones there. You can spend more money on them if you want, but I keep them in every backpack I have, every room I have. I can take down a phone number if I want. When I'm at a doctor's office, when they give me the little appointment card, I can write down the next day and time and doctor's office where I need to be there and put that in my wallet instead of putting another essentially blank card, because I can't read it, into my wallet. I'm marking it right then, right there. So it's so cool to just have this portable tool again. So back to our original point of it's just being a very powerful tool that you can put in your toolbox and use however it serves you best. Now I do have a couple of suggestions for where folks can go if they want to learn Braille, and these are all resources that I'll be providing to Sean, and he'll be adding to his notes. But there is Hadley. They've been around for years. They've changed their program recently. They do a Braille for Everyday Use series that's just helps you learn the alphabet to start with. It's free to take Hadley classes. If you've taken them in the past, more than like 3 years ago, they've changed a lot. So keep that in mind. It's not the Hadley you probably knew if you haven't revisited them recently. Other than Hadley, we also have there's the McDuffie reader that's available for purchase out there. It's one volume with the actual Braille in it, so you can really get your fingers on the Braille and everything. It can be a little intense to start with, but that's one of the things that the calls I facilitate kind of tries to help fill in the gap for. We try and help be there to just assist people along the journey. And sometimes the journey can be a little overwhelming, and we're there to be, hand holders or whatever needs to be done. But that McDuffie one, we've had a lot of success. We have mentors with it who are working with groups of learners and just working through A to Z, and then they get into punctuation and then contractions, and it's off to the races. It's great. We really see people catch that Braille bug. If you are good at using your assistive technology, I cannot recommend UEB online more highly. It's something where you can use your desktop or laptop. You can't use a tablet, unfortunately. You do have to have a computer with a keyboard associated with it, but it's going to take your keyboard and convert 6 of the keys on it into the dots for what we call a Perkins style entry. Perkins, you might have heard of a Perkins Brailler. It's our manual typewriter we use to write Braille. But UEB Online takes that input system and works you through, I believe it's 32 lessons. Each lesson has 2 modules on it. And you also go from A to Z, then through the contractions. You can't move on until you've gotten something right. So it works really well for certain type of learners. And there's all sorts of resources on there as well that you can click on as you're going through it. It's really fantastic. It is done by Vision Australia, so you need to keep in mind they're using, the Queen's English or whatever, so there's a few more OUs in their words as they're spelling them than ours. But all the rules are the same, all the contractions are the same. That's a beautiful, the beauty of Unified English Braille again. But just want to always try and give that little disclaimer when I send people to UEB Online, because don't want anyone to get frustrated over a spelling issue. And then just real quick, our last thing I want to talk about is what we do on the ACB Community Calls platform with Braille. Every Saturday at 6 p.m. we have a general session where we talk about something Braille related. This coming weekend, Saturday, May 20th, we're going to be talking about different learning options. The ones I just talked about will go into depth on and talk about a few others too. So if anyone wants to join us, I'll get that info to Sean. And then every Sunday and Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, we have what we call the Braille rooms. And this is where we open up the breakout rooms on Zoom and have people work one-on-one sometimes. Sometimes it's more like 1-on-3, like I said, with the McDuffie rooms, but we just try to cater to the learner, whatever it is they're learning, how they want to learn. We're there to support. So if you decide to take this Braille journey and jump in, we'd love to have you join us. We're just a fun-loving, Braille-loving group who definitely understands what it means to go through the vision loss process and the having to learn Braille later in life. So we're there to help. We hope you can join us. We also do one call a month. We call the Dots of the Month. And we go through a Braille calendar just to decipher it for everyone. And then we just finished our first call called Deciphering Dots, where we got a kids book and read it together. And we'll be starting that again in a couple weeks once everyone gets their next book. And that brings me to my very last point. If you learn Braille, you already have some great resources if you're involved with BARD, the NLS's service for Braille and audio reading downloads. And there's a Braille on Demand program we're utilizing where you can get up to 5 free hard copy volumes or titles in Braille to keep. And that's what we're getting those children books through. And they're also starting to give out e-readers, which are electronic devices that are basically refreshable Braille displays. They're just allow you to read the text. They're not note takers, but you can connect them to your phone and your computer and take notes with them. It's really cool to be able to use those. And so if you start learning Braille, you can get that and it's free, the same way the Talking Books player is. It gets issued out to you and you keep it as long as you like. So if you have any questions and I haven't convinced you to learn Braille by now or anything, I think it's time to ask those questions. And I don't know, Sean, was there anything you wanted to say first? Any questions?
Well, yeah, so thank you, Dorlyn, so much for this presentation. This was really informative, and I was excited to hear like how much Braille makes sense the way that they have things out, which is not something that can be said about some other available languages out there. So that's really exciting. So I want to let everyone know well, first off, this is recorded again, so we will share the recording here in just a couple days. Just takes a little bit for us to get it uploaded. But for those of you who have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Additionally, if you want to verbally ask your question, you can unmute yourself. There is a button at the bottom left of your screen, or of most screens. It looks like a microphone. You can select that. Additionally, you can also on the keyboard select Alt plus the letter A. If you're on a Mac, it's Command plus Shift plus A. And if you're on the phone, it is *6. So please feel free and unmute yourself and ask if you have any questions. While that's happening, my first question for you is, what is the typical like learning curve for people new to Braille? So like when would is there like a 101, a 201, and things like that?
I think one thing you have to keep in mind with Braille is, well, what I really found is there's Braille for your brain and there's Braille for your fingers. So you need to memorize the code. You need to memorize your dot combinations. And for me, that went so fast, like very quickly. I've heard people say you can learn Braille in 20 minutes, and that's what they're talking about. They're talking about memorizing the dot combinations. Some people are going to take a lot longer. We have one woman who has had some brain trauma and she has a hard time learning, and she's been working at it very diligently for a year and a half now, and she's really done great. But it's just like, and she's there now, she's learned the code. So for me, 20 minutes to memorize it, for someone else, a year. It really depends on you personally, but I think the memorization comes quickly. Getting your fingers to pick it up can be the harder part. For me, I'm a type 1 diabetic. That's how I lost my sight, was from diabetic retinopathy. So I spent a lot of years poking my fingers. I have some neuropathy. And I've heard people say, oh, you can't learn Braille because of this. And I actually didn't think I could learn to read novels or anything. And I am actually reading novels now. I'm reading all sorts of stuff, but that has come more slowly. I would say it's taken me a good 3 years of dedicated practice with my fingers on the page to get to where I'm at. But I'm comfortable picking up a tome of Braille because they can be kind of bulky, and opening it up and reading it. And when I really started focusing on reading the Braille, I started with a kid's book, and it took me hours and hours to do a couple of pages. So it'll take some time, but with Braille, the amount of time and practice you put in, it pays off. As with maybe everything, but it really shows up in Braille. Oh, did we lose you, Sean?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was muted. I muted myself and then I just unmuted myself. I see, Shri, you unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So do you know if there is currently an app that I could use to practice going through the dots on maybe on my Mac or
1:44 p.m.
Or on my phone where I can connect a keyboard to it and just practice the 6 dots, and it just tells me if I'm hitting the right letters?
There's a couple of Braille apps people have brought to my attention. I haven't used any of them recently. I can find an answer to that though, Shri.
That'd be great. I did get my first packet from Hadley for the first 3 letters, so
Yay.
I'm kind of eager to do this. But I would like to see if there was an app that I could just practice, going through those letters on a keyboard. Because you said, I'm assuming there's 3 keys that are going from left to right, or 6 keys going left to right.
Yeah, exactly. So it takes your F, D, and S keys on your left hand and your J, K, and L keys on your right hand, and converts them into dots 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6, respectively.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great if I could find an app to just practice it too. Thank you.
Yeah,
this was good.
Yeah, and I have to see, but you can also use Braille screen input on your iPhone, and that can be a fun way to practice. I haven't mastered Braille screen input, but I am also a little behind you when it comes to how good I am with Apple, Shri. So I think you might have some more success with that. And there is there's an Alexa skill too. Sorry, an A-Lady skill. I want to say it's Braille dots or something like that. So there's some ways out there. I'll see if I can come up with a list of those sorts of things.
That'd be great. Thank you. This was good.
Yeah, good deal. Glad to have you here. Glad you got the Hadley books coming. You're going to catch the Braille bug before you know it.
Hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
That is a great question. If there's a way to gamify the learning, because I remember, when I was in grade school, they did gamification for keyboarding and things like that. Is that something that's available?
Well, I think that UEB Online resource is really good because I felt it fed my lizard brain in the way those kind of games do, But I mentioned we do our Saturday weekend Braille together call. I actually love games. So I am making up Braille learning games constantly, and we play those on Saturday nights at least once a month, a lot of times 2 times a month. Last weekend we played what I call the Braille Bowl, got into 3 different teams, and people were able to pick which category they wanted. I had things like the letters, the numbers, punctuation, and then things like what we call dot 5 words, which is a dot 5 before a letter that'll create a whole word in and of itself, and short forms, which are kind of abbreviations almost. So people got to pick what they wanted to do. If they got it right, the team got 2 points. If they missed it, they got to consult with their team. And then if they got it right, which they always did after that, is 1 point. And we had a great time. A lot of people pick up little things that they haven't learned yet in the code, or we actually had one woman one night be like, okay, I'm going to learn contracted Braille now because of this. So we try and always have a good time. That's one of our games. We also play base Braille ball. We basically get into 2 teams and play baseball and go through different words and spellings with dot combinations, and other nights where we'll do fill in the Braille and do like song titles and stuff. We have a good time. So I'll try and come up with some apps and stuff like that, but we definitely have some analog games on Saturday nights if anyone's ever interested.
All right. Any other questions for now? I think there's somebody.
Sean, this is Sri again.
Go ahead.
What is that cost? Is there a cost for that program with the Australian that you talked about?
No, it's free. It's so fantastic.
Is it just a website you sign up, or is that how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So you go to uebonline.org. And from there, there's a way to do like a computer test to make sure that your system's up to date enough and that you've got the right keyboard to do it. That's how we kind of found out you couldn't use a tablet with a Bluetooth keyboard. But you go on there, do your little screen test and sign up for the free account, and then you can just start taking the modules. Not only does it have the UEB literacy courses, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about letters and those, it also has UEB math courses on there. So that's cool. And like I said, they've got all the resources to like the rule book and stuff like that. So I would definitely check out uebonline.org if I were you. I think you'll like it. You'll know pretty quickly if it's not for you too. But
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I enjoyed that. And that one is one where they'll offer you a certificate at the end of the first 15 classes or the first 15 lessons, and at the end of the last of 32 of them or whatever. And those, if you want that certificate, you have to pay for that. But it's not, you don't have to pay for anything to actually learn it. So like I've completed it and graduated from it, but I haven't paid for the certificates, you know, so you don't have to do that. But just to give you a heads up, there is that on the website. So, but know everyone that it is free to do.
All right. I see we have somebody unmuted. It just says iPhone. Who's that?
This is Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Pocket Braille is a really good app to learn Braille.
Oh,
It has all the dots for each of the letters.
cool. She
So
did
I
the
just
work
wanted to
for me, guys.
Pass on that info.
Pocket Braille. Oh, cool. I'll download that. Do you know if that's for iOS and Android or?
I think it's just iOS.
Okay. Well, cool. I'll check that out. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Let's see. So tempted to.
This is Sri. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that name. What was the name of the app?
Pocket Braille.
Pocket Braille. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's a good name for it.
All right. Somebody, John unmuted.
Hi, John.
Do you have a question?
Was that me?
Yes.
Oh, I just joined, so I need
Oh, okay.
muted, but whatever. Okay. Hello.
Well,
Hi.
welcome.
Thanks.
That sounds like a Jonathan I know.
Yes, it is.
Welcome, sir. Good to have you
Thank
here.
you.
I know you know some Braille. Gentleman has given me a Braille copy of the Metro map, actually. So that's another thing. If you learn Braille, you can get a copy of that. And it's a fun little tool to have.
This is Sandy. I have a question.
Hi,
Go ahead,
Sandy. What's up?
So this is really, really basic. How do you distinguish where you've gone from one group of 6 dots to the next group of 6 dots when you're reading across, so that you don't mix up 4, 5, and 6 with 1, 2, 3, thinking that is a combination?
Mm-hmm. That's a
get
great
offset?
question. Yeah, it does come with practice. When you first are learning, you don't come across too many things that might confuse you like that. There are some things, but you do start to get the relation to things as you go. So for instance, here, let me get my little muffin tin up again for anyone who can see. A .6 and then a .A is what we would do a capital A. But that can also look kind of like a .3-4 just because of the way it is. And so you'll use context clues a lot of times, you know, and as I've been reading more and more, though, I find I stop less with something like that. And when you're learning new things, sometimes, and on like a special symbols list or something at the beginning of a book, they'll put a dot locator at the beginning of it where it's a .4-6 followed by the full Braille cell, so all 6. So you have that relation between the two cells. So you can fill where that .4 and 6 ends and your full cell begins, if that makes sense. But
Well,
that's a great question.
is
ahead.
there a little bit of space between each group of 6 dots? Just so your finger has a little bit more space in between, and these dots belong together, and then there's a gap and these dots belong together?
Yeah, it is a very small gap, but it is bigger than the gap between the two columns.
Okay.
So
you learn.
as you're yeah, you do. And one of the great things about our Braille cell being the 2 columns wide and the 3 down is it fits really nicely on like the pad of your finger. It's not too big for it or too wide. So like one cell will kind of fit right under your finger. And as you're reading at first, you are kind of reading character by character and figuring them out. But as you keep reading and you're reading more and more, your fingers actually start recognizing the shape of the entire word. And you get faster and faster. You might, if kids these days, when they're taught to read, they get what they call sight words that they meant or that they recognize at sight, right at sight. They don't have to sound them out or anything like that. And truly your fingers get that way too, where it's like, you know it at first touch, maybe not first sight, but the feel of the word, the characters coming together start to register in your brain. So it's cool. It's fun to watch yourself progress as you do it, because it's something you truly see progress as you do it, and I would suggest anyone who's starting to do it, make note of where they start at and then where they're getting to, because if you start to get discouraged, it's just so good to realize how far you've come, because Braille is a pretty good exponential curve.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we had a question. Are there like single cards, I guess like flashcards with just the or with just the initial 26 letters?
Yeah. There are actually National Braille Press sells a pack of them, and I believe everyone is allowed to request one free from National Braille Press, like an alphabet card from them. The National Library Service also makes a card, I believe, that you can call your regional talking books library and request. So this is I'm not sure if you can see this where it's at, Sean, but this is
it's squared in the photo.
This is one of the ones from National Braille Press that I had gotten. I bought like a pack of 25 of them. And so it's nice. I think it's got some punctuation at the bottom, but I think it's laid out where you've got A. Yeah, there it is. A. And then you go across. Sorry, to fill the Braille, my finger has to obscure the Braille for you guys. But then all the way to J here on the end, and then you can see the row underneath it, like I'd said, where it's just the .3 added to all the same configurations. And then beneath that, you'll have the next line where you've got U, V, well, X, Y, and Z all fit the pattern. W is actually a funky one we didn't talk about. It doesn't fit our pattern exactly. It got moved to the end of a line simply because when the code was developed, it was done by Louis Braille, who was French. And at the time, they really didn't use the W in their alphabet. So
Interesting.
yeah, so fun fact or trivia bit about Braille.
Great.
W is in the wrong place.
All right, and we have time for one more question. Janice, I see your hands raised. You are muted though. There you
I
go.
was going to say that the National Federation of the Blind gives out free Braille cards. You can call them, and I've gotten a couple of them. And they'll ask you how many do you want, so I don't know what the quantity limit is.
Oh, good deal. That's great to know. I'm gonna have to call them up and ask for one. I want to get my hands on that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're a great resource for a lot of stuff. One of the pocket calendars I have in Braille, I got from them. The American Action Fund from the NFB, they put a pocket calendar out every year. So once you get signed up for one, you start receiving it every year. So that's exciting too.
Oh, that is good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last question. Shri.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned about your pendant. What is it?
Oh my goodness, I almost deprived you guys. I'm so sorry. So one of the things about contracted Braille that is cool is each letter can come to represent a word on its own when it stands there. So my necklace says JDX, which in Braille or in contracted Braille stands for just do it. So it was something where I did when I started getting back out into the world. You know, you just gotta, I think we talked about this at the cane travel one. You just gotta get out there and you just gotta do it. And so when I came across that in Braille, I was like, oh, I love it. And don't tell Nike, you know.
So JD, what was it again? JD?
JDX, because
JDX.
X in contracted Braille stands for the word it. Most of the letters correspond with like J for just, D for do. X is one of the exceptions. C for can, Y for you. So YCDX, you can do it. So go learn Braille, guys. You can do it. And it's a fun code.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Dorlyn, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. This was really great and very informative, a great crash course. And I want to learn more now, right now. So, you know, I hope folks on the call enjoyed it. And if you want to see this again, folks, this will be recorded and we will share all of those resources that Dorlyn mentioned later on this week. So Dorlyn, thank you again. And thank you everyone for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.